everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Atheist Experience Live. I'm your host, Matt Doheny. Joining me this week, Russell Glasser.
Hey, Matt. Great to be here.
We had some changes in co-hosts and shuffling around, and today's show is going to be considerably different than past shows. But this is a live public access show sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin. It's March 27th, 2011, and we stream this live over the internet. For more information about the show, you can go to atheist-experience.com, and for more information about the ACA, you can visit www.atheist-community.org, and there you'll find a frequently asked questions page, ways to contact us via email. The email address, by the way, is tv@atheist-community.org. We cannot possibly promise to answer all of them, especially the ones we got in this week, which was quite the flood. So most of you who watch regularly and have been in the chat channel associated with Ustream since about 10 o'clock this morning, whatever, are already aware that we have on the phone Ray Comfort, who many of you know, and I'll be introducing in a couple of minutes.
Have people been camping out with pup tents?
I think so. I think they wanted to make sure that they got in on the stream, but also we, on both Facebook and the blog, submitted a request for people to send in questions. We got, 100 and some odd people.
All told, could be close to 200.
Yeah, it was a bunch of questions. Some were serious, some were not. Some were decent questions, some were not. Some were mean-spirited, some were not. Russell and I reviewed them. We had a bunch of stuff of our own that we wanted to talk about, obviously, since this is the first opportunity we've had to chat with Ray, and we'll get to that in just a couple minutes. For more information, if you go to the ACA website, you'll find also a calendar of events, which includes things like our monthly lecture series at the Austin History Center and the Atheist Happy Hour on Thursdays. And after this program's over, we get together for dinner at El Arroyo on 5th Street. And normally they would put the address up. We're still having issues with our CG, so the joys of live TV in a public access studio. Our guest today, who I'm going to go ahead and introduce real quick, is Ray Comfort, who runs Living Waters Ministries, produces a television series in conjunction with Kirk Cameron called The Way of the Master. He's the author of many books, and he has a blog that is frequented by atheists and I suppose some Christians alike, maybe. And he's a popular street evangelist. Ray, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Matt. It's great to be here.
How are you?
Really, really good. I'm very excited, and I'm privileged to be on this program. Thank you so much.
Sure. I appreciate you calling in, or us actually calling you, whatever. However we managed to get you on here. There was some confusion as to whether we'd even be able to call out, but toll-free numbers are allowed, so it works
thanks
fine.
for coming on. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having a toll-free number.
Nice to meet you too, Russell.
So you had asked for us to pull some questions, and we did. Of course, we had some of our own, but I wanted to get kind of started here. Obviously, we have different perspectives about reality. You have within your worldview, or maybe coloring your entire worldview, is this idea that a God exists, particularly the God as represented in the Bible, and I do not. Now, considering that we have a different view about this, what is the best method to resolve that, to come to some agreement about what is truth?
Well, I don't know if you could put your finger on what is truth. I can, as a Christian, I can say I found absolute truth. Jesus said, I am the truth. And I don't know if any atheist can point to some atheist that said that, or point to anything that you can say this is absolute reality. For you, the whole thing could be an illusion.
So, Ray, I could do that right now, but you wouldn't believe me.
Okay, give me a try.
Okay, I am the way. Everything I say is true.
Yeah. Okay.
So
now resurrect yourself from the dead, and I'll believe you.
Well, how do you know that happened?
Well, the thing is, for a Christian, we're not going by a belief. We're going by the power of God. Before I was a Christian, I believed in Jesus. I believed that he was an historical figure. But on the night of my conversion, I came to know him, whom the Bible says to know is life eternal. So, just as far more real than I know my wife is my walk with Christ. It's my very life itself. So when Jesus said, I am the life, he means he is the very source of life. He's the substance of life that became a human being for the specific purpose of destroying death for humanity.
Sure. So, but from an external point of view, we're still dealing with a claim. You are making an appeal to some experience that you've had, which testifies to the reality of it for you. And what I'm asking is, absent that experience, how could anybody else possibly know? Could they be justified?
Well, that's a good question. It's like if you didn't believe in electricity because you can't see it, hear it, touch it, taste, or smell it.
Believe in what? Sorry?
If you didn't believe in electricity.
Oh.
Because it's an invisible force. And I said to you, hey, take this fork, stick up this lighter socket, and you'll more than believe. You'll experience His power. And that's what happens when someone truly becomes a Christian. They move out of the realm of intellect into the realm of personal experience. They don't just believe, they know experientially about the power of God, and that's the power that God puts behind the gospel.
Now, wait a minute. I want to back up a minute because you said that it would move out of the realm of intellect, but that makes it not a good analogy to electricity, like you just said, right? Because the realm of intellect is exactly how we know all the details of how electricity works.
Yeah, but you don't experience it. There's a difference between intellectual acknowledgement, electricity is real, and actually feeling its power through your body.
Right. So you're still appealing to the primary, I guess, the primary proof, for lack of a better word, is direct experience. And I'm just asking you, are you then conceding that absent that direct experience, people wouldn't be justified in believing?
No, not when it comes to the existence of God. All you need is eyes that can see it, a brain that works. You look at creation and say there's a creator. But what atheists do, or should I say the new atheists or contemporary atheists, they say there's no creation. That denotes a creator, and that denotes a moral responsibility. So we just call it nature. And nature created itself, which is unreasonable, makes no sense. Something cannot create itself.
Yes, that statement is nonsensical. Nature created itself. There's a number of errors in grammar there. You can't just call something creation in order to say, I'm going to call this creation, therefore it had to have a creator. Obviously, if it's a creation, it had to have a creator.
Right.
But it's not necessarily creation. You haven't demonstrated that. You've just simply asserted that it's a creation. And the thing that you're objecting to about saying nature created itself, that's more of a grammatical problem, because the idea isn't that nature created itself as some kind of thoughtful act. It's that that existence doesn't necessarily require the creator that you claim it does.
Well, you tell me what was in the beginning without saying I don't know.
Well, why can't I say I don't know?
Because that's ignorance, and you can't have that as an atheist.
Well, yes, you can, because atheists aren't asserting absolute certainty or knowledge or any of that stuff.
Well, Christians do, because they know that there's a creation and there's a creator.
Sure, but asserting knowledge is different from demonstrating that this knowledge is true.
Well, you see, I don't need to demonstrate to a reasonable person that a painting had a painter.
Right. Do you know why?
Tell me why.
Because we recognize that a painting had a painter, not because it's complex, not because it's ordered. We recognize this from experience. All evidence points to this thing having or being designed. Okay, we recognize design by contrasting it with what is naturally occurring, and that's why you can hold up a painting and a tree side by side, and you would say, oh, the painting is obviously the creation of an intelligent mind, because we have no examples of paintings coming into existence on their own. We have no examples of paintings being able to reproduce. All evidence, we have millions of examples of paintings created by thinking minds. So all of the evidence points to this. The contrast, though, is that trees do naturally reproduce, as do people and living things. We have a good understanding of how planets form out of accretion disks from suns. Those things are naturally occurring. That contrast between naturally occurring and created is something that is how we determine whether or not something was designed. And what you're doing is kind of like, you're familiar obviously with Haley's watchmaker analogy, where you find a watch and its intricate workings supposedly lead one to deduce that it was designed. But in reality, what you have is a watch lying on a field of watches in a universe of watches, because you believe everything is designed. So there is no point of contrast for you.
What you believe, if I'm getting it rightly, is that you believe everything has a semblance of design. From the atom through the universe, it seems to be designed. There's order. There's not chaos.
No, I wouldn't say it seems to be designed, because I was specifically saying that design is contrasted against naturally occurring. Order itself is not necessarily a product of design. Sand dunes in the desert look very orderly, but they're not designed, and they don't give, not everything gives the impression of design, and those things which do give the impression of design aren't necessarily designed.
People have, for a very long time described things as appearing to be designed because the way people learn in general is to make analogies to things that they already know. So when we say how the eye works, we tend to describe it in terms of things that we know how they already work, like a camera. But that doesn't mean that the eye is a literal camera.
Right.
I agree with that.
Oh, of course. But here's my contention, is that everywhere you look in this universe, we see design or order.
No, we don't.
Well, you don't, but I do.
Yeah, and
Okay?
that's
And
why.
that comes
and
back
that's
to
what
what Matt was saying.
Let him
Yeah.
finish.
Let me finish. So, our most intelligent person on the face of this earth cannot create a grain of sand from nothing. We can't create a leaf, a flower, a bird, let alone an eye or a brain. So to say that all this nature, as you want to call it, came to being without a creative designer is to be disingenuous, because it cannot make itself. It's crazy to think that.
First of all, there's a huge fallacy there of saying that the smartest person can't make a grain of sand. I can't even begin to identify how much is actually wrong with that statement. But you're characterizing this as a creation from nothing still, and this all coming to being on its own. If we look at the universe, the limited understanding that we have so far, which is growing constantly, the best method that we have for understanding reality has been the scientific method, by and large. It's the single most reliable, consistent, self-correcting method for discerning truth. Now, if there's some other way of finding out the truth about reality, of course, we'd all be interested in knowing it. But when you say that the smartest person on the earth can't create a grain of sand, therefore, it must have been created by some other intelligence.
I actually didn't say that, Matt.
Well, you said it would be absurd to think that this came into its own.
Let me tell you what I said,
Sure.
so you can back up a little. The smartest person, most intelligent person on the face of this earth cannot create a grain of sand from nothing.
All right.
We can recreate what
Sure.
God's already given us. We can change it.
Well, we can modify.
We can modify
what
what's
exists.
already there.
Right.
But you are still just asserting that we are modifying things that God gave us, and
Yeah.
I'm saying, apart from your appeal to some special way of knowing, this direct revelation from God or direct experience with God, how else could we justify that? Because that could never. Yeah, surely you would agree that your personal experience could not possibly be justification for somebody else.
Yeah, but let's go back to what we're talking about. Do you agree or don't you agree with me when I say the most intelligent person on the face of this earth cannot create a grain of sand, a leaf, a flower, or a bird, or a frog from nothing? We don't know where to start.
I agree
with that.
And I also say that 50,000 years ago, the most intelligent person on the face of the earth probably couldn't have created a cell phone from the actual pieces.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's relevant.
And the other thing, too, you mentioned the scientific method. Could you define that for me?
Well, there's a number of different definitions, but the guiding principle is that you begin with an observation, you develop a hypothesis, and then there is a process of testing and falsification, peer-reviewed research where others attempt to replicate your results and to falsify them to demonstrate, that we're constantly trying to prove that this is wrong, and then you get to the point where an hypothesis has graduated and becomes a theory, and it becomes the best current explanation possible.